The road to legal recreational cannabis has been full of speed bumps, dead ends, and detours. It's required some advanced navigation on the part of advocates and even from those who oppose it. Are we near the end of the road? Our Line Opinion panel takes that question up as their first foray into the headlines this week. Joining us, our editor and publisher of the Santa Fe Reporter, Julianne Grimm. Attorney and public safety expert Ed Perea returns. And from the Garrity Group PR line, regular Tom Garrity is back. Now, Julianne, as it stands, there are at least 3 bills in the Senate committee that plans to have a hearing on Saturday the 6th. That's tomorrow, to see if they can reach a consensus. But the odds-on favorite to pass the Senate is actually a House bill. That's HB 12. Does it feel like there's a solution coming to you?
I think there could be. Certainly the Senate Majority Leader and the chairman of the committee that these bills are currently parked in gave some really clear direction last Saturday to kind of what he would like to see, what the two of those men would like to see come back, this weekend when the Senate committee takes this up again. And that's really, the spirit of compromise. Nobody really wants to vote on 3 or 4 bills. But as is the case usually in our legislature, there's a good degree of cooperation where the Senate bill that's been proposed by Senator Candelaria and the House bill that's been proposed by Representative Martinez, among others, that they already have a lot of similarities, and they were described as companion bills. They don't line up exactly, but for the purpose of 183 pages at last count, I think that they are functionally similar. And that's kind of, it seems like the bill that has the most support. However, you saw a lot of provisions in a bill coming out of a Republican from the South, Senator Cliff Pirtle. And some of the rural senators favor provisions in Pirtle's bill. And Senator Candelaria said that he was amenable to kind of rolling some of that in. There are big differences that they're not going to be able to resolve. But, I think that we're going to see some compromise version show up on Saturday morning, but not much before then.
That's a good point there. Tom, interestingly, this is not a terribly partisan issue as it's unfolding. It's really kind of interesting to watch. But it is interesting. Julianne just mentioned there are things starting to come into the tent, as they say, and one of them is the idea from Republicans to let municipalities opt out of legalization. That's not part of the House bill, certainly, HB 12. But talk to that. Is that potentially a big problem here?
Well, local control, right? Mm-hmm. Originally, so that's a huge issue. And, who is going to be the one, with the hot potato of responsibility, and who's going to get the bag of cash through all the revenues? Is it going to be the state, or is it going to be the local government? So, that's what it's really, I think it's going to be one of the driving forces, because originally, one of the original items that came up with this whole discussion was, we have to find a way to make up for the shortfall in oil and gas revenues. Right. So at first it was a revenue discussion, and then it became a personal freedoms conversation. And then it became, let's tie the medical back into this and stuff. So it's really taken many different forms. So, I'm going to be very interested to see what House Bill 12, because I think that's really the bill that is going to be, shaped and formed. The foundation is there. The contents of the legislation have been remodeled over and over, as Julianne had been talking about. So I'll be very interested to see what the latest remodel looks like on that House Bill 12 foundation.
Right. I hate to, put this as some kind of Super Saturday, Super Bowl kind of thing here. But when you think about it, guys, this is the last Saturday to be able to do these kind of things. If you think about it, next Saturday potentially is much too late, and certainly not the Saturday after. So this is it. Ed, and interestingly, the social justice aspect, big potential sticking point, and one of them is the terms of requiring expungement to legalization, meaning if you've got something on your record for a marijuana violation in years past, it will be removed. That's a standalone discussion, it seems to me, that needs some serious talk. Does this have a potential to torpedo this whole thing?
Well, it may. I mean, this has always been, again, you have two different camps there. I mean, one camp says, hey, if this is now legalized, why should someone who's been charged with it in the past be harmed by it with possible employment or other forms of discrimination as a result of this past record? The other side says, well, it's so important that if this is part of an individual's history, that people are aware of it, that employers or anyone else is aware of it. And I think it can be so contentious, and we have two sides of that issue, that it could be a sticking point that could torpedo the entire legislation. But it sounds to me like there are some efforts to compromise. But again, as you say, Gene, there are some concerns about that one sticking point.
Mm-hmm. A couple of organizations out there, they're on the record having some problems with that. Julianne, interestingly, I want to talk about timing. It's not fair to look back and say, oh, if we had done this maybe 3-4 years ago, we'd be cashing in. But I'm seeing the estimates for what we can expect to come in from legalization on the recreational side as far lower than what people were hoping for even 3 to 4 years ago. I'm hearing 90 million, 100 million, not chump change, but as Tom mentioned earlier, we need some way to make up for oil and gas. What are you hearing for potential income, so to speak, from recreational? What's your research telling you?
I don't think that there are many people who believe the cannabis industry will replace the oil and gas industry in terms of revenue. I don't think that's even within the realm of anybody's hope, but it's one of I think the backers will say, one of the ways that New Mexico could diversify its tax revenue stream. But that said, all of the various government groups and the contracted folks that are looking at this question of tax estimates, it's all over the map. You've got Dr. Kelly O'Donnell, who is the analyst for the Senate committee that the bill is currently parked at. She's been working on this issue for a number of years, and she's developed a demand model that takes into account how the illicit market and the regulated market will interact with each other. So one of the things that she's noted is that it's not going to happen immediately, that all of the black market cannabis dries up and all of it becomes taxed, that there's going to be a gradual shift there. And so, you've got these estimates that range from, as low as 25 million in the first year to as high as 150 million in 5 years. The question also remains what the tax structure will look like. The various proposals range from everything from a 9% state excise tax, which is stacked on top of all the local gross receipts, down to a more flat rate that just comes back, to the locals. So there's a whole range of tax proposals. And again, we're not really going to know which proposal has traction, until this sort of backdoor negotiations finish up and we see what happens on Saturday morning.
Ed, interestingly, I'm curious, Julianne makes a very good point, and when you think about it, 70 million, 25 million, whatever the million is, that's all well and good. But the tax bit is tricky. A lot of folks are feeling like if you tax it too high, you're just going to drive people back to the black market anyway, if the cost of it is too high. As a law enforcement person, does that make sense in your gut?
Well, Gene, I know we focus a lot on the revenues. We talk a lot about the revenues and what it can do for the state and replacing other forms of revenue. But what we're not talking a lot about, again, are the costs associated with the legalization of recreational marijuana. And I think that's something that needs to be taken a little closer look at. If you look at some of the other states that have already legalized, their social costs are incredibly high. And so we want to take this slowly and not only look in one direction, and that's the revenue that we would make, but actually those social costs that may come out of this.
Ed, I haven't had a chance to ask you directly. Are you generally in favor of this, or do you feel like there's just too much stuff out there to be making this legal at this point?
I'm a political moderate, and I like to look at both sides of the issues. And obviously, the extremes on both sides have a very strong position on this. This has been a movement that's been coming on for some time. I, of course, as former law enforcement professional, I've seen the negative effects of drug use of all sorts. And so, when we start talking about legalizing yet another substance, which can have negative social cost in a variety of different ways, whether it's with our health care or even the crime that may result as a result of use, I think we want to be very careful as we walk down this road. I am more for let's walk cautiously and let's not be in too big of a hurry to get this legalized. We know this has been a movement for some time, and some might argue that, hey, we've been working on this and the time is now. But I think we need to continue to take a step back and walk through this very cautiously. The idea of having yet another substance that people have access to legally, and I know the arguments of both sides, I think concerns me a little bit.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I asked. Hey, Tom, real quick, just got a couple of minutes here. The last stop for HB 12 I mentioned is Senate Judiciary. This could be very interesting. You know, Joe Cervantes flirted with the idea that legalization in his run for governor, we might recall that, but he's sort of backed off since then. Is this committee where things go to die, this one particularly?
You know, it used to be Senate Rules Committee, right. Is where things just went to kind of quietly go away. For Senate Judiciary, they've been pretty good about getting things in and out on a timely basis. I think it will come out of Senate Judiciary for a vote on the full floor. The question is what will that finally look like? I think Ed brings up some great points of the unintended consequences of legislation like this. Seeing that there are still 4 bills out there and really not really an agglomeration of what that would look like as far as you have all these different perspectives, which tells me that perhaps it might be best to wait for an additional year to get all of those different items worked out, maybe in the form of a task force or something along those lines. But Senate Judiciary, they've been pretty good getting things, moving the train through. So I think it'll move through, and then we'll get into, probably some pretty extensive debate there on the Senate floor.
Exactly. That's where the action's going to be. Out of time on this, but